and welcome to this new video. My name is Robin, I'm your licensed shakuhachi instructor, and today I want to talk a little bit about Robuki. So Robuki basically means blowing ro. It comes from ro, the note ro, and then buki from fuki, which means to blow. And it is perhaps the most important exercise that we do on the shakuhachi. There is this famous quote by Watazumi where he says that he who blows ro for 10 minutes every day can become a master. So this exercise is important. But why exactly is it so important? Well, Robuki is where we get to develop our tone. And our tone is perhaps the most important thing, the most important aspect to practice on our shakuhachi if we really want to become great players. There are like 3 things that should be constantly improving throughout your shakuhachi practice or music practice in general, and that's tone, rhythm, and pitch. And in Robuki you get to work mostly on tone, but also on pitch actually, and we'll get into that later. But this is where you get to practice the most basic of the basics. This is where you get to develop and lay the foundation of all of your playing. And this is particularly important for shakuhachi playing because we're playing, especially when we're playing honkyoku, we're often playing music that's very simple, that doesn't have a lot of rhythm, that doesn't have a lot of melody. So in many ways, we are relying on the very basics to make our playing sound beautiful. And that is also where the magic in a lot of shakuhachi playing is. If you look at somebody like Goro Yamaguchi, who arguably never did anything particularly out of the ordinary or special in terms of adding lots of ornamentations or like melodic things or doing anything that's particularly exciting because it's interesting. But he did have an incredible tone. He has this tone that makes every shakuhachi note just like this ocean where you just want to lie in and just be like, ah. Like it's this feeling of, it's divine. It's just, and it's so simple. And that is the magic of a lot of shakuhachi music, is that it is so simple. But because it is so simple, it's also really hard to do well. Because the only way that you can really do it well is by having really, really, really good basics. And this is something that's actually quite common in any kind of Japanese art, and especially arts which have been influenced by Zen culture, is the idea of simplicity, and thereby things become very hard to do well. Sushi, for example, is a good example. In sushi, you have rice, and okay, you mix in some vinegar and stuff like that, and then you have fish, and maybe a bit of wasabi, and soy sauce. That's it. There's no sauce, no special sauce, no secret ingredient that you can put in there to pep things up. This is also why it doesn't make a lot of sense to eat cheap sushi, just because it's not going to be very, very good. And you see this a lot in Germany actually, it's horrible, sorry. People come up with all of these ways to make sushi more interesting. They add barbecue sauce, they put they sprinkle stuff on top, they make it this huge, like elaborately designed platter of lots of stuff that you don't need. Why? Is because making good sushi is expensive. Buying really, really good fish is expensive. Buying the best rice, the best soy sauce. And all of that it comes down to really making really good sushi is just to have the very best ingredients, the perfect cutting technique, having the best rice you can get at the perfect temperature. And it's the same with shakuhachi playing. Like we can disguise our lack of good tone to some extent by just playing things that are melodically interesting and by doing exciting stuff. But anybody who really listens is going to tell that, okay, something there lacks foundation. So we really want to invest a lot in our foundation. We want every note that we play on the shakuhachi to be just absolute beauty. You want to be able to walk into a room, play one note on your shakuhachi and entrance everybody, at least in theory, just because your tone is so amazing. And the shakuhachi is an incredibly dynamic instrument. There are so many overtones in there. There are layers of sound that you unlock as you develop your tone. And a really good shakuhachi tone is like a really good wine. You know, it's not just one dimensional. It has depth, it has complexity. There are these, you discover things in it. It changes, like the taste changes in your mouth as time passes. And in the same way, when you blow on your shakuhachi, and you can kind of hear that, you know, as the note unfolds. And that might not have been the best example because I'm kind of talking and then playing at the same time, but you can hear how like different layers of the sound unfold, you know, as the breath moves and is released into the flute. And that's kind of what we want. And that's also what we want to explore in Robuki practice. And Robuki practice is important because, yes, it's tone development, but tone development, I think, in shakuhachi is actually developing the connection with your flute. And Robuki is particularly good for this because you're just playing the one note. You don't have to worry about fingerings, you don't have to worry about rhythm. All you have to do is you hold your flute and you blow. And it's all about you, your body, your blowing technique, your breath, your airstream, and the flute, and how these three things come together. And that's what you want to be exploring when you do Robuki. Okay, this is where you get to really focus on just connecting with your flute and developing what's called really good sawari, which just means something like resonance, which just means basically hitting the utaguchi in just the right way, you know, just grazing the shakuhachi, blowing just above it to get like the maximum power and resonance and connection with the flute. And ultimately it is about connection. It is how can you blow just the right amount of air, just right over the utaguchi to get this piece of bamboo to vibrate in the most powerful way. And this is something that will translate not just to your overall tone, but also to your ability to play other notes, like kan notes, for example. Oftentimes, kan notes and later also the daikan notes, particularly the daikan notes, can be very hard to get. And what I found actually in playing daikan notes is that if I use the same technique that gets me very good tone on my roll, then I'm actually much more likely to get my daikan notes. And the daikan notes actually become easy. So basically having good connection and good resonance with the flute is a key to unlocking many other things, not just having a nice full roll. So how do we best practice Robuki? So it should probably be the first thing that you do when you pick up your shakuhachi. And then as you work yourself into it, you want to feel, okay, like how does my body feel? How does my sound feel? What is the connection between these things? If my body is tight, then my sound is likely also to be tight. So is there something that I can relax a little bit more? And then you explore. You try, okay, what happens if I push my upper lip a little bit more? Like, if I make these little changes, maybe in my posture, but maybe also in my embouchure, in the way that I hold the flute, in the way that the flute sits on my chin. What changes? What changes does that make in pitch and in tone? Opening the throat is a big one, actually. So if you ask me, actually, or I have found at least, that if you really want to get the really powerful shakuhachi sound, the one. To hear that this really, really powerful, sometimes it almost sounds a little bit like a foghorn or something. But that's how you get, that's when you get really the full power out of the shakuhachi. You don't always want to play that, but you would definitely want to be able to. If you really want to get that, to me, it's actually about opening the throat and then pushing up and blowing against the lower lip. Those are actually the most important things I find to focus on if I really want to get that sound. And if you can get that sound, then using the same technique that you use to get that sound is also going to help you get difficult notes like daikan notes or high kan notes. and it's going to make a huge difference. So that's kind of what you want to be exploring when you do Robuki. And then you can also do variations. You can play Robuki in Kan, you can play Ro with Buraiki. That's a fun one. But really, just playing Otsu no Ro for 10 minutes every time you sit down with the shakuhachi and being really curious about it. Right? And don't be content with just getting a nice roll. Just really explore, try things out. How can you connect better with the flute? How can you get more out of your own way, get more out of the way and open things up for your airstream to basically arrive at the utaguchi in the most unobstructed and clean way. So that involves opening the throat, pulling the tongue back and down, opening your mouth a little bit wider than, so that you can still close your lips, but still just creating a bit more like larger resonance chamber. Posture, breathing into the stomach, all these different things. There's a lot of things that we need to focus on when we play shakuhachi, that at the same time. And Robuki, because it is so simple, gives you the time to really focus on your body, really focus on your technique, and really focus on this, what I like to call the holy trinity of shakuhachi playing, which is your body, and then you have the flute, and then you have your airstream. This is kind of like the Father, the Son, and then the Holy Ghost. The connection is your airstream, and how you shape your airstream, and what happens to your airstream before it hits the utaguchi. All of that, what happens in here is really, really important. And that's what you get to focus on when you play Robuki. So do not skip your Robuki practice. I actually feel like I did my Robuki practice, but also I could have done it more, and I could have developed better tone sooner, I think. It's actually fairly recent that I've been able to get this really full, powerful sound on the shakuhachi, and it's not as, it's not as easy. It's starting to get easy, but it's not as I want it to be. So that's all I have to say on this matter for now. So I just want to encourage you, do your Robuki practice, and know that this practice will translate also to other things, not just tone development. And view it as flute connection practice. That's the goal here. You really want to get, how can you get this piece of bamboo to vibrate more powerfully? That's basically the question that you're trying to answer every time, or that you're exploring every time that you're doing your Robuki. So never skip your Robukis, no matter what you're doing. And yeah, that was basically it for today. I hope you enjoyed. I hope this was helpful to you. If you have any questions, leave me a comment, send me a message. If you're interested in shakuhachi lessons, also send me a message or go to my website, www.robintamura.com. And I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.